The ambulance doors exploded open, and a soldier hit the emergency room floor hard, blood spreading across white tile like spilled paint. His uniform was shredded, his face gray with shock, and when his eyes locked onto the nurse standing 3 feet away, the one everyone called boring, forgettable, invisible, he grabbed her wrist with trembling fingers and whispered the words that would detonate everything. "Lieutenant, they told us you were dead." Every head in the ER turned. The woman they were staring at looked nothing like a soldier. She looked like someone who'd given up. Faded scrubs, worn shoes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She'd been working at Riverside General Hospital in Millbrook for 2 years, and in all that time, not a single person had looked at her twice. Until now. If you're watching this, stay until the very end. This story gets darker and more satisfying than you can imagine. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. And if you love stories about justice, secrets, and people who hide the kind of power that can't be erased, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get into it. The soldier's name was Corporal Jamie Vance, and he was dying. Sarah Calloway didn't need the monitors to tell her that. She could see it in the way his pupils were dilating, the bluish tint creeping into his lips, the shallow rise and fall of his chest. She'd seen it 100 times before, in places most of these doctors couldn't even pronounce. "Somebody get a gurney!" one of the residents shouted, panic threading through his voice. Sarah didn't move. She stood near the supply cabinet, hands at her sides, watching the chaos unfold with the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. They always said she was too quiet, too detached, not friendly enough. Dr. Marcus Holt, the head of trauma surgery, had pulled her aside last month and told her she needed to work on her bedside manner if she wanted to keep her job. She'd nodded and said nothing, because that's what Sarah Calloway did. She kept her head down, did her work, and stayed invisible. "Vance, stay with me!" The paramedic was doing chest compressions now, sweat dripping down his face. "We need Trauma Bay 2 open now." "Someone page Dr. Holt," another nurse yelled. Sarah's gaze flicked to the soldier's exposed forearm, where a tattoo peeked out from beneath the torn fabric. She recognized it immediately. 4th Battalion, Marine Raiders. The same unit she'd pulled out of an ambush in Helmand Province 6 years ago. Her jaw tightened. "Move, move!" Dr. Holt appeared in the hallway, white coat billowing behind him like a cape. He was tall, sharp-featured, and carried himself like a man who'd never been wrong about anything in his life. "Get him on the table. Start a line. Someone give me a status report that actually makes sense." The paramedic rattled off vitals. "Shrapnel wounds to the chest and abdomen. Possible punctured lung. He's been in and out of consciousness since we picked him up." "Shrapnel?" Holt's voice dripped with irritation. "What the hell happened?" "Training accident," the paramedic said quickly. "Live fire exercise went wrong." Sarah's eyes narrowed. That was a lie. She could tell by the way the paramedic avoided eye contact, the way his hands fidgeted with the gurney strap. Holt didn't notice. He was already barking orders, directing the team like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Get him into Bay 2. I want imaging up in 5 minutes. And someone find out if he's allergic to anything before we pump him full of—" "Lieutenant?" The word came out as a whisper, but it cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone stopped. Corporal Vance's eyes were open, locked onto Sarah with an intensity that didn't belong in a dying man. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, pulling her closer. "They said you were dead," he repeated, louder this time. Sarah's face didn't change. "You're confused, Corporal. Save your strength." "No." His grip tightened. "I saw the report. Operation Sandstorm. The whole unit wiped out. Your name was on the list." The room went silent. Dr. Holt's eyes shifted between Sarah and the soldier, his expression somewhere between confusion and annoyance. "Calloway, do you know this man?" "No," Sarah said flatly. "Liar." Vance's voice was getting weaker, but his gaze didn't waver. "You carried me 3 miles through enemy fire. You kept me alive when I should have bled out in the dirt." One of the nurses gasped. Sarah pulled her wrist free, her voice cold. "You're mistaking me for someone else." "Your tattoo," Vance rasped. "Left wrist, Combat Medical Unit 12. Every pair of eyes in the room dropped to Sarah's arm. She was wearing long sleeves, like always, but the fabric had ridden up slightly when Vance grabbed her, exposing just enough skin to see the edge of black ink, a faded insignia that didn't belong on a small-town nurse making $14 an hour. Dr. Holt stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Calloway, what is he talking about?" "Nothing." Sarah tugged her sleeve down. "He's delirious. We need to get him stabilized before— Show me your wrist." It wasn't a request. Sarah met his eyes for a long moment, then slowly pulled back her sleeve. The tattoo was small, barely 2 inches across, but unmistakable. A caduceus wrapped in barbed wire, with the words CMU12 etched beneath it in block letters. "Holy shit," one of the residents whispered. Holt's face hardened. "Explain, now." "It's old," Sarah said, "from another life." "Another life?" Holt's laugh was bitter. "You told us you went to nursing school in Ohio. You said you worked at a clinic in Cleveland before moving here. You never mentioned military service. You never asked." "Don't play games with me, Calloway." Holt's voice rose. "If you were in the military, that's something you disclose during hiring. It's something you put on your damn resume." "I did my job," Sarah said quietly. "That's all that matters." "Like hell it is." Holt turned to the rest of the staff. "Get him into surgery. I'll handle this." "No!" Vance's hand shot out again, this time grabbing Holt's coat. "You don't understand. She's not just some nurse. She's— Enough!" Holt yanked his coat free. "Security, get him sedated and prepped for surgery. And someone get Calloway out of my ER." Sarah didn't wait to be escorted. She turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind her, she could hear Vance still trying to speak, his voice fading as the sedatives kicked in. "They're coming for her. Tell her they know." The doors swung shut. Shake. Sarah sat in the break room with her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee, staring at the wall. She'd known this would happen eventually. You couldn't run forever. You couldn't bury the past so deep that it never clawed its way back to the surface. But she'd tried. For 2 years, she'd been Sarah Calloway. Quiet, unremarkable, forgettable. She'd worked her shifts, paid her rent, and avoided anything that might draw attention. No friends, no relationships, no mistakes. And now, because one dying Marine recognized a tattoo she should have had removed years ago, everything was unraveling. The door opened and Dr. Holt walked in, his expression cold. "We need to talk." Sarah didn't look up. "There's nothing to talk about." "Really?" Holt folded his arms. "Because I just got off the phone with HR, and they're very interested in why you lied on your employment application." "I didn't lie. I just didn't include everything." "That's called lying by omission, Calloway." Holt's voice was dangerously calm. "And it's grounds for termination." Sarah finally looked at him. "So fire me." "Oh, I will, but first I want answers." He pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "Who are you? Really? You already know my name." "I know the name you gave us, but that soldier in there seems to think you're someone else. Someone important. Someone who died in some classified operation that I can't even find records of." Sarah said nothing. Holt leaned forward. "You know what I think? I think you're hiding something, and I think whatever it is, it's going to blow up in this hospital's face. So you're going to tell me the truth, or I'm calling the police." "Call them." Sarah stood up. "I'm done talking." She made it 3 steps before the alarm started blaring. Code red. Active shooter. The announcement echoed through the hospital speakers, cold and mechanical. "All personnel shelter in place. This is not a drill." Holt's face went white. "What the hell?" Gunfire erupted somewhere on the first floor. Sarah's entire body shifted in an instant. The exhaustion vanished. The slumped shoulders straightened. Her eyes sharpened into something cold and focused. Holt noticed. "Calloway, stay here." Sarah was already moving toward the door. "Wait, you can't— Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone you don't recognize." She didn't wait for a response. The hallway was chaos. Nurses running, patients screaming, alarms shrieking from every direction. Sarah moved through it like water, calm and purposeful. She passed a security guard crouched behind a desk, radio pressed to his ear. "How many?" she asked. "At least 4, he stammered. "Dressed like paramedics. They came in through the ambulance bay and started shooting." "Where's the nearest exit?" "East stairwell, but—" Sarah was already gone. She reached the stairwell and paused, listening. Footsteps. 2 sets, coming up fast. She stepped back, grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall, and waited. The door burst open and two men in stolen paramedic uniforms appeared, rifles raised. Sarah swung the extinguisher like a bat, catching the first one across the jaw. He went down hard, unconscious before he hit the floor. The second one tried to aim, but Sarah was already inside his guard, twisting the rifle out of his hands and driving her elbow into his throat. He collapsed, gasping. She picked up one of the rifles, checked the magazine, and kept moving. 3 floors down, she found the real target. Corporal Vance's room. The door was open, and a man in a black tactical vest was standing over the bed, pistol aimed at Vance's unconscious face. "Step away from him!" The man spun around, eyes widening when he saw Sarah holding the rifle. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's had a really long day." Sarah's voice was flat. "Put the gun down." The man hesitated. "Now!" He lowered the pistol slowly, then lunged for cover behind the medical cart. Sarah didn't fire. She didn't need to. She moved before he could react, closing the distance in 3 strides and driving the rifle stock into his ribs. He folded, and she finished it with a sharp knee to his face. He hit the floor and stayed there. Sarah checked Vance's vitals. Still alive. Still breathing. She heard boots in the hallway. More of them. She dragged the unconscious attacker into the corner, grabbed his radio, and listened. "Target's still alive. Back up to the 3rd floor, now." Sarah's jaw clenched. They weren't here for a robbery. They weren't here for drugs. They were here to finish what they'd started. And that meant Vance knew something worth killing for. The boots got louder. Sarah positioned herself by the door, rifle raised. Then the lights went out. Emergency backup kicked in, bathing the hallway in red. Sarah's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Amateurs. She stepped into the hallway just as the first attacker rounded the corner. What happened next lasted less than 10 seconds, but it would end up on every security camera in the building. Sarah moved like she'd been doing this her entire life, because she had. She dropped the first attacker with a single shot to the vest, center mass, knocking the wind out of him. The second one tried to return fire, but she was already behind cover, flanking him before he could adjust. 2 more down. The last one was smarter. He ducked into a patient room using a terrified elderly man as a shield. "Drop the gun or I shoot him," he screamed. Sarah's expression didn't change. "No, you won't." "I swear to God, you won't shoot him because you need me to think you're willing to, which means you're not." She fired. The bullet went through the man's shoulder, spinning him away from the hostage. Sarah crossed the room in 2 strides and slammed him into the wall, hard enough to crack plaster. He slumped to the floor, groaning. Sarah turned to the elderly patient, who was staring at her like she'd just walked out of a nightmare. "You're safe," she said quietly. "Stay in your room." She left before he could respond. The hallway was silent now, except for the alarms. Sarah made her way back to Vance's room and found Dr. Holt standing in the doorway, face pale, staring at the unconscious attackers scattered across the floor. "What?" His voice cracked. "What are you?" Sarah didn't answer. She heard sirens outside. Police, military, maybe both. She set the rifle down and walked past Holt without looking at him. "Calloway, wait. Don't." She kept walking, because she knew what came next. The questions, the investigations, the truth. And once the truth came out, Sarah Calloway, the invisible, forgettable nurse, would disappear forever. Outside, black SUVs with government plates screeched into the parking lot. Men in tactical gear poured out, moving with the kind of precision that told Sarah exactly who they were. And standing in the middle of them, scanning the hospital entrance with sharp, calculating eyes, was a man Sarah hadn't seen in 6 years. Colonel Nathan Reeves, her former commanding officer, the man who'd signed her death certificate. Their eyes met through the glass doors. Reeves didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. Sarah's hands curled into fists. Whatever was coming, it was going to tear this hospital apart. And she was going to be standing right in the middle of it. Colonel Reeves walked through the hospital doors like he owned the building, and maybe in that moment he did. The tactical team fanned out behind him, weapons lowered but ready, moving with the kind of synchronized efficiency that made the hospital security guards look like children playing dress-up. Sarah stood in the middle of the lobby, arms at her sides, watching him approach. She didn't run, didn't hide, just waited. Reeves stopped 3 feet away, his eyes scanning her face like he was searching for something he'd lost a long time ago. "Sarah, don't." Her voice was quiet but sharp. Don't use that name. It's your name. Not anymore. Reeves glanced at the unconscious attackers being zip-tied by his men, then back at her. You took down 4 armed hostiles by yourself, in a hospital, while wearing scrubs. 5, Sarah corrected. There's 1 in the stairwell. A muscle in Reeves's jaw twitched. You haven't lost a step. I wasn't trying to keep them. Clearly. He gestured to his men, and they began moving through the building, clearing rooms, securing exits. We need to talk. No, we don't. Lieutenant, I'm not a lieutenant. I haven't been a lieutenant in 6 years. You made sure of that when you declared me KIA. Reeves' expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or calculation. With him, it was always hard to tell. That was necessary, he said quietly. You know that. Necessary for who? For you, for the unit, for… Save it. Sarah turned to walk away. Corporal Vance was targeted because he knows what happened in Kandahar. Sarah stopped. Reeves stepped closer, lowering his voice. The operation you survived? The one that killed 12 Marines and left you barely breathing? Someone's been cleaning up loose ends. Vance is the 4th survivor they've tried to eliminate in the past 6 months. Then protect him. That's your job. It was your job too, once. Sarah turned slowly, and the look she gave him could have stripped paint off walls. You don't get to say that to me. Not after what you did. I gave you a second chance at life. You erased me. I saved you. Reeves's voice hardened. You were burned, Sarah. Compromised. There were people in very high places who wanted you dead because of what you saw. I gave you an out. I gave you papers, a clean identity, a chance to disappear. And you did. You vanished so completely that even I couldn't find you for 3 years. Good. Until today. Reeves glanced around the lobby, where hospital staff were starting to gather, whispering, staring. Now you've blown your cover in the most spectacular way possible, and every intelligence agency with an alphabet is going to want to know where Sarah Garrett has been hiding. Dr. Holt appeared in the hallway, flanked by 2 hospital administrators Sarah recognized but had never spoken to. They looked like accountants who'd accidentally wandered into a war zone. Excuse me, Holt said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. But who the hell are you people? And why are you turning my hospital into a military base? Reeves pulled out a badge. Colonel Nathan Reeves, Defense Intelligence Agency. This facility is now under federal jurisdiction pending an active threat investigation. You can't just… I can. I am. And if you interfere, I'll have you removed from the premises. Reeves's tone left no room for argument. Now I suggest you focus on treating your patients and let us handle the situation. Holt's face turned red. This is outrageous. I'm calling our lawyers. Call whoever you want. They'll tell you the same thing I just did. One of the administrators, a thin woman with wire-rimmed glasses, stepped forward. We have protocols, procedures. You can't just storm in here and… Ma'am, with all due respect, 4 armed men just tried to execute a patient in your ICU. Your protocols failed. Your security failed. Right now, the only thing standing between this hospital and a massacre is my team, and… He gestured at Sarah, a nurse you were probably planning to fire. The administrator's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Holt's eyes cut to Sarah. Is that true? Are you really military? Sarah met his gaze. Former. Holt laughed, bitter and sharp. Former. You took down 5 armed men like you were swatting flies, and you want me to believe you're former? Believe whatever you want. I want the truth, Calloway, or Garrett, or whoever the hell you actually are. Reeves stepped between them. Doctor, I strongly suggest you take your staff and return to your duties. This conversation is classified. Classified? Holt's voice rose. She works for me. She's been working here for 2 years, and apparently she's been lying the entire time. She was doing her job, Reeves said coldly, which is more than I can say for your security team. My security team didn't sign up to fight terrorists. Neither did your patients, but here we are. The tension in the lobby was thick enough to choke on. Staff members clustered in doorways, watching, recording on their phones. Sarah could already see the headlines forming in real time. Mystery nurse reveals military past. Hospital under siege. Secret soldier saves dozens. She wanted to scream. Instead, she turned and walked toward the exit. "Lieutenant, wait. Stop calling me that." Reeves caught up to her in 3 strides. "You can't leave. Watch me. Vance is awake. He's asking for you." That made Sarah pause. Reeves pressed his advantage. "He says he has information, something about Kandahar. He'll only talk to you." "Then you're out of luck because I don't want to talk to him." "Sarah, you don't understand." She turned, and for the first time, Reeves saw something raw in her expression. "I left that life behind. I buried it. I became someone else because I couldn't carry it anymore. And now you're here, dragging it all back up, and you expect me to just... What? Put the uniform back on? Pretend like the last 6 years didn't happen? I expect you to do what's right." "Right?" Sarah's laugh was hollow. "You have no idea what's right." "Then tell me." "No." She pushed past him and headed for the stairs. Reeves didn't follow, but his voice carried across the lobby, quiet and heavy. "They're coming for you, Sarah. The people who wanted you dead 6 years ago? They know you're alive now, and they won't stop until you're not." Sarah kept walking. Behind her, she could hear Holt already on the phone, voice sharp and indignant, probably calling the hospital's legal team. The administrators huddled together like frightened birds. Nurses whispered in corners, some looking at her with newfound fear, others with something that might have been respect if it wasn't mixed with so much shock. She climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, each step feeling heavier than the last. Her legs ached. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the adrenaline crash that always came after combat. She'd learned to hide it years ago, but it never really went away. The ICU was quieter now. Most of the patients had been sedated after the chaos, their rooms dim and still. Sarah could hear the rhythmic beeping of monitors, the soft hiss of ventilators, the shuffle of nurses trying to return to some semblance of normal routine. She found Vance's room at the end of the hall. 2 of Reeves' men stood guard outside, and they straightened when they saw her approach. One of them was young, maybe 25, with the kind of clean-cut look that screamed fresh out of advanced training. The other was older, scarred, weathered. The older one nodded at her. "Ma'am." Sarah didn't correct him. "He's still awake?" "In and out. Vitals are stable, but he's asking for you every time he comes around." She reached for the door handle. "Ma'am?" The younger guard hesitated. "Is it true what they're saying, that you served in CMU 12? Sarah's hand froze on the handle. "Where'd you hear that?" "Word travels. Combat Medical Unit 12 was... They say it was the best. It was a long time ago. Still, just thank you for your service." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once and went inside. Vance looked worse than before. The surgery had saved his life, but the cost showed in the pallor of his skin, the tubes running from his arms, the shallow way his chest rose and fell. Bandages wrapped his torso, and she could see the edges of fresh sutures peeking out from beneath the hospital gown. Sarah stood in the doorway, watching. She'd told herself she wouldn't come, told herself it didn't matter what he knew, what he remembered, what he wanted to say. But she came anyway. Vance's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something that looked like relief. "Lieutenant." "Just Sarah?" "Can't do that, ma'am. Wouldn't feel right." She stepped into the room and closed the door. "You shouldn't have recognized me. Hard to forget someone who carried you 3 miles through hell. That was a long time ago. Not for me." Vance tried to sit up and winced. "I think about it every day. That ambush, the way everything went sideways, you telling me to stay awake, keep breathing, just a little longer." Sarah pulled a chair closer but didn't sit. "You said they're coming for me." "Who?" "Same people who've been hunting us, the survivors." "Why?" Vance's eyes dropped. "Because we saw what happened. What really happened. Kandahar was a bad op. Bad intel, wrong location, too many hostiles. We all knew that. It wasn't bad intel, Lieutenant. It was a setup." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah's hands tightened on the back of the chair. "Explain." "The target we were sent to extract? He wasn't a hostage. He was a contractor, working for people in our own government, moving weapons, information, money. And when he threatened to talk, they sent us in to clean up the mess." "That's impossible. We had clearance from people who wanted us all dead." Vance's voice cracked. "Think about it. We were 12 of the best combat medics in the service. We'd all seen things, heard things, treated people who talked too much under morphine. We were liabilities. So they sent us into an ambush and made sure none of us walked out. Except we did. Four of us did. You, me, Rodriguez, and Kim. And now Rodriguez and Kim are dead. Car accidents, training mishaps, convenient deaths that nobody questioned. Sarah's stomach turned. You're telling me our own people tried to kill us? I'm telling you they succeeded with everyone but us, and now they're finishing the job. Why wait 6 years? Because you disappeared. The rest of us stayed in the system. Easier to track, easier to eliminate. But you? Vance's eyes met hers. You vanished, and that scared them more than anything. Sarah sank into the chair. Her mind raced through the fragments of that night. The bad coordinates, the delayed air support, the way the enemy had known exactly where they'd be, exactly when they'd arrive. She remembered the smell of burning fuel, the screams of dying Marines, the way the sand had turned dark with blood under the moonlight. She'd always assumed it was chaos. War was chaos. But if Vance was right... Who? She asked quietly. Who gave the order? I don't know names, but I know it goes high. High enough that Reeves had to fake your death to keep you safe. Reeves knew? He suspected. Why else would he pull you out of the system completely? Why else would he give you a new identity and make you disappear? Sarah's head swam. Everything she'd believed about the last 6 years, the idea that she'd chosen to leave, that she'd walked away on her own terms, suddenly felt like a lie built on top of another lie. The men who attacked you, she said. Did you recognize them? Private contractors, same ones who've been cleaning up the other survivors. Blackridge Solutions. They do wet work for anyone with enough money and the right connections. How do you know? Vance reached under his pillow with a trembling hand and pulled out a small flash drive. Because I've been investigating, collecting evidence, names, dates, money trails, bank transfers, emails, recorded conversations. It's all here. Sarah stared at the drive like it was a live grenade. That's why they want you dead. Not because of what you saw, because of what you can prove. Vance pressed the drive into her hand. I was trying to get it to Reeves when they ambushed my convoy. Thought I was done for. Then I saw you, and... He smiled weakly. Guess the universe isn't finished with us yet. Sarah pocketed the drive, feeling its weight like an anchor. Who else knows about this? Just you and me now, and whoever's been trying to kill us. Then we need to... The door burst open. Dr. Holt stood there, flanked by 2 hospital security guards and a woman in an expensive suit Sarah didn't recognize. Holt's face was twisted with anger and something else, vindication maybe, the kind of look people got when they finally had the upper hand. That's her, Holt said. Arrest her. Sarah stood slowly. What? You're fired, Calloway. Effective immediately. And you're being detained for lying on federal employment documents, reckless endangerment, and assaulting hospital staff. I didn't assault anyone. The men you attacked are filing complaints. Apparently, one of them has a broken jaw, another has fractured ribs, and all 5 are claiming you assaulted them without provocation. Those men tried to kill a patient. So you say. But funny thing, when the police questioned them, they claimed they were private security hired by the patient's family to protect him from a deranged former military operative. Holt's smile was vicious. You. Sarah's blood ran cold. That's a lie. Is it? Because right now I've got 5 injured men with lawyers and witnesses, and I've got you, a woman who lied about her entire identity for 2 years. Holt gestured to the woman in the suit. This is Patricia Kerrigan, our hospital's legal counsel. She's been reviewing your employment file. Care to explain why you falsified your nursing credentials? I didn't falsify anything. You listed a nursing school in Ohio that has no record of you. You provided references that don't exist. You claimed work experience at a clinic that closed 3 years before you supposedly worked there. Kerrigan's voice was crisp, professional. That's fraud, Ms. Calloway, or should I say Ms. Garrett? Sarah said nothing. The board met 20 minutes ago, Holt continued. We're pressing charges. Attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, theft of hospital property, and fraud. When this is over, you'll be lucky if you're not in prison for the next decade. You can't be serious. I'm dead serious. You're done, Calloway. And when the media gets hold of this, and they will, You'll be the monster who infiltrated a hospital and attacked innocent security personnel." The security guards moved forward. Sarah didn't resist when they grabbed her arms, didn't fight when they pulled her hands behind her back. The metal cuffs bit into her wrists, cold and unforgiving. She just looked at Holt, her expression flat and cold. "You have no idea what you're doing. I'm protecting this hospital, something you should have done instead of playing action hero. Those men were killers. Those men were security contractors doing their job. You're the only killer in this building." Vance tried to sit up, his voice weak but desperate. "You're wrong. She saved my life. She saved all of us. Mr. Vance, I suggest you rest. You've been through a traumatic experience and you're clearly confused about what happened." "I'm not confused. I know exactly what I saw." Holt ignored him, nodding to the guards. "Get her out of here and make sure everyone sees. I want the staff to understand what happens when you lie to this institution." They led her out of the room. In the hallway, staff members had gathered. Nurses, doctors, technicians, orderlies. Some looked shocked. Others looked afraid. A few looked satisfied, like they'd always known something was off about the quiet nurse who never talked about her past. Sarah kept her head up, her face blank. She'd survived ambushes, firefights, betrayals that killed everyone around her. She could survive this. The guards walked her through the corridor, past the nurses' station where she'd worked hundreds of shifts, past the break room where she'd eaten countless meals alone, past the supply closet where she'd hidden during her first week because the sounds of the hospital had triggered memories she couldn't control. 2 years of invisible existence, erased in a single day. They reached the main lobby, where Colonel Reeves stood talking to one of his men. His eyes tracked her movement, sharp and calculating. She could see the question forming in his expression. Should he intervene? Sarah shook her head once. A clear message. Don't. Reeves's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. He understood. Getting involved now would only make things worse, would link her officially to military intelligence, would put a spotlight on secrets that needed to stay buried. The guards pushed her toward the exit, toward the police cruisers waiting outside with their lights flashing red and blue against the evening sky. And that's when the lights went out. Not just in the lobby, the entire hospital plunged into darkness. For 3 seconds, there was nothing but confused voices and shuffling feet. Then emergency generators kicked in, bathing everything in red. Someone screamed. The guards' grips loosened for just a second. Surprise, instinct, confusion. And Sarah twisted free. Her hands were still cuffed behind her back, but she'd learned a long time ago how to move with restraints. She dropped low, spun, and used her shoulder to knock one guard off balance. The second guard reached for her, but she was already moving, sprinting toward the stairs. Behind her, Holt's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop her! Someone stop her!" Gunfire erupted from the upper floors. Not single shots. Automatic weapons. Multiple shooters. People screamed and scattered. Reeves was shouting orders, his team spreading out with weapons raised, but Sarah was gone, disappearing into the red-lit stairwell like smoke. She hit the stairs at full speed, her breath coming hard, her wrists aching where the cuffs cut into skin. She could hear boots pounding behind her, the guards probably, or maybe Reeves's men. Didn't matter, she was faster. She reached the second floor and paused, listening. More gunfire. Closer now. Voices in the hallway, speaking in clipped professional tones. Target confirmed on 3rd floor. Secure all exits. Shoot on sight. Sarah's blood turned to ice. They weren't here for Vance this time. They were here for her. She moved along the wall, silent despite the cuffs, despite the chaos. A crash cart sat abandoned near the nurses' station. She knelt beside it, found the small emergency toolkit strapped to the side, and used a scalpel blade to work the cuff lock. It took 15 seconds. The cuffs fell away. Footsteps approached from both directions. Sarah grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and pressed herself into a recessed doorway. 2 men appeared, dressed in tactical gear, weapons raised. Not hospital security. Not police. Contractors. Like the ones from earlier. But these were better trained. They moved with military precision, clearing corners, checking sight lines. Sarah waited until they passed, then stepped out and swung the extinguisher. It caught the first one in the back of the head. He went down without a sound. The second one spun, bringing his rifle around, but Sarah was already inside his guard. She drove the bottom of the extinguisher into his throat, cutting off his startled gasp, then swept his legs and let him crash face first into the floor. She took his rifle, checked the magazine, and kept moving. The hospital's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. This is a code black. Armed intruders on multiple floors. Shelter in place immediately. Do not attempt to leave the building." Sarah moved through the darkness, silent and focused. She could hear boots pounding above her, voices shouting coordinates, weapons cocking. They were organized, professional, well-funded. But so was she. And they'd just made the mistake of turning her hunting ground into a battlefield. She reached a supply room, slipped inside, and locked the door. Pulled out her phone. The one she'd kept hidden for 2 years. The one with an encrypted line that connected to exactly one number. She dialed. Reeves answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Second floor, East Wing. How many?" "At least 12 that we've counted. Probably more. They hit us hard and fast, knocked out main power, jammed communications, sealed the exits. This is a kill box, Sarah." "I know. They're here for me." "I figured. Vance?" "Still in his room. He gave me something. Evidence." A pause. "What kind of evidence?" "The kind that gets people killed. Listen, these contractors, they're not just trying to clean up witnesses. They're trying to erase the whole operation. Which means they'll burn down this entire hospital if they have to." "Yeah." Another pause. Then Reeves's voice dropped. "I can get you out. Back entrance. Through the loading dock. My men will cover you." "What about the patients?" "So, Sarah, what about them, Nathan?" She heard him exhale. "We're evacuating who we can, but with the exits sealed and shooters on every floor, people are going to die." "Yes." Sarah looked at the rifle in her hands, looked at the door, thought about the flash drive in her pocket, the evidence that could bring down everyone responsible for Kandahar. She could run, disappear again, let Reeves handle the aftermath, or she could do what she'd always done, fight. "I need you to do something for me," she said quietly. "Name it. Get everyone to the basement, patients, staff, everyone. Lock it down and hold that position." "Sarah, what are you— Just do it, and give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes for what?" "To make them regret coming here." She ended the call before he could argue. Then she checked the rifle, took 3 deep breaths, and opened the door. The hallway was empty. Red emergency lights cast everything in shadow. Sarah moved like water, smooth and silent, years of training taking over. She could hear them now, footsteps, radio chatter, the soft click of weapons being readied. They were hunting her. Time to show them what it felt like to be prey. She reached the central stairwell and looked up. Shadows moved on the landing above. At least 3 of them. Sarah pulled the pin on a smoke grenade she'd taken from the downed contractor and tossed it up the stairs. It detonated with a soft pop, filling the stairwell with thick gray smoke. Confused shouts, coughing. Sarah went up the stairs fast, using the smoke as cover. The first contractor stumbled out of the cloud, and she hit him with the rifle stock. Quick, precise, brutal. He dropped. The second one fired blind, bullets sparking off metal railings. Sarah slid low, came up behind him, and drove her elbow into his kidney. He went down gasping. The third one was smarter. He backed away, weapon raised, finger on the trigger. "Don't move," he said. Sarah looked at him through the smoke. "You first." She kicked the fallen contractor's rifle. It skittered across the floor, and the standing contractor's eyes flicked toward it for just a fraction of a second. That was all she needed. She closed the distance, knocked his rifle aside, and put him down with a combination that would have made her hand-to-hand instructor proud. 3 down. 9 to go. At least. Sarah kept moving, clearing rooms, disabling contractors, working her way toward the 3rd floor where Vance was trapped. She could hear Reeves over the radio now, coordinating his team, moving patients toward the basement. Good. That bought time. But time was running out. She reached the 3rd floor landing and found the hallway in chaos. Patients in wheelchairs, nurses trying to evacuate, contractors advancing from both ends. Sarah stepped out of the stairwell. "Get down!" she shouted. Everyone hit the floor. She opened fire, controlled bursts, precise shots, the kind that came from muscle memory so deep it didn't require thought. She wasn't trying to kill, just disable, scatter, buy time for the civilians to escape. The contractors returned fire, but they were shooting into a crowd of their own people, trying not to hit patients. Sarah had no such limitation. She moved through the chaos like a storm, taking down anyone wearing tactical gear, covering the retreat of anyone in scrubs or hospital gowns. One of the nurses looked at her with wide eyes. "Who are you?" "Keep moving," Sarah said. She reloaded, checked her corners, and pushed forward. Vance's room was 30 feet away. A contractor stepped out, weapon raised, aimed directly at the door. Sarah put 2 rounds in his vest. He went down hard. She reached the room, kicked the door open, and found Vance trying to pull his IV out with shaking hands. "We need to move," she said. "I can't. The surgery." "You can, and you will. We don't have a choice." She helped him to his feet, ignoring his groan of pain, and half-carried him into the hallway. Behind them, more contractors appeared. Sarah fired without looking, using the muzzle flash and sound to estimate position. They made it to the stairwell. Down 1 floor. Then another. Vance's breathing was ragged, his face gray with pain, but he kept moving. They reached the basement level just as Reeves's team sealed the doors. Reeves looked at her, then at Vance, then back at her. "You're insane," he said. "Probably. How many did you—" "Enough." "How many civilians?" "Almost everyone. Staff, patients, visitors. We're locked down here until backup arrives." "When's that?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Sarah nodded. 20 minutes. They could hold for 20 minutes. Then she heard it, a sound that made her blood run cold. Footsteps. Lots of them, coming down the stairs. Someone had breached the upper floors completely, and now they were coming for the basement. Reeves heard it too. His face went hard. "Everyone back. Form a defensive line. Anyone who can hold a weapon, grab one now." Nurses and doctors scrambled to comply. Some of them looked terrified, others looked determined. Sarah checked her rifle. Almost empty. She looked at Reeves. "Tell me you have extra magazines." 2 boxes. "Behind the medical supply cart." She grabbed them, loaded fresh magazines, and positioned herself at the front line. The footsteps got closer, then stopped. Silence. Everyone held their breath. A voice echoed down the stairwell, calm and professional. "Sarah Garrett, we know you're down there. We know you have the drive. Give it to us, and we'll let everyone else walk out alive." Sarah's jaw tightened. Reeves looked at her. "Don't." "I'm not." She raised her voice. "You want it? Come down here and take it." A pause. Then laughter. Cold and empty. "Have it your way." The grenades came first, flashbangs, smoke, confusion. Then the contractors poured down the stairs like a flood. And Sarah Garrett, the invisible nurse from Riverside General Hospital, became a soldier again. The flashbangs hit the concrete floor with metallic clinks that Sarah's brain registered half a second before detonation. She turned her head, squeezed her eyes shut, and opened her mouth to equalize pressure. The world went white and silent. Even prepared, the disorientation hit like a physical blow. Her ears rang. Her vision swam with after-images. But her hands knew what to do even when her brain couldn't catch up. She fired blind into the stairwell, short controlled bursts aimed at center mass height. Someone screamed. The ringing in her ears started to fade, replaced by the sharp crack of gunfire, the shouts of Reeves' men returning fire, the terrified cries of civilians huddled behind overturned gurneys and medical carts. Sarah blinked hard, forcing her vision to clear. The contractors were coming down the stairs in a coordinated stack, using smoke and suppressing fire to advance. Professional, disciplined, exactly what she'd expect from Black Ridge Solutions, but they'd made one critical mistake. They'd trapped themselves in a fatal funnel. "Concentrate fire on the stairwell," Sarah shouted. "Don't let them establish a foothold." Reeves and his team responded immediately, pouring rounds into the narrow opening. The contractors were forced back, taking cover on the landing. A brief lull. Sarah used it to assess. The basement was large but crowded, at least 60 civilians packed into a space designed for half that. Medical equipment everywhere, limited cover, 2 exits, both sealed from the outside. She looked at Reeves. "How long until backup?" 15 minutes. "We won't last 5 if they breach this room." "I know." One of the nurses, young, blonde, still wearing her name tag that read Jessica, was crying silently while trying to comfort an elderly patient. A doctor Sarah recognized but had never spoken to was using his body to shield two children whose parents must have been visiting when the attack started. These people weren't soldiers. They were civilians who'd come to work expecting another boring shift, another day of saving lives in the mundane, unglamorous way that didn't involve bullets and blood. And now they were going to die because Sarah had brought her past into their present. "Give me the drive." Sarah turned to find Dr. Holt crouched behind a supply cabinet, his face streaked with dust and fear, but his eyes burning with anger. "What?" "The evidence Vance gave you. Give it to them. Let them have it and end this." "That's not how this works." "How what works?" "Your war." Holt's voice cracked. "These people aren't soldiers. They're nurses, orderlies, patients. They don't deserve to die for whatever secrets you're protecting. You think giving them what they want will save anyone here?" "It might." "It won't." Sarah's voice was flat. "The moment they get that drive, everyone in this room becomes a witness, and Blackridge doesn't leave witnesses. You don't know that. I know exactly that. I've seen their work." Vance, slumped against the wall with his face gray and sweating, spoke up. "She's right. They'll kill everyone. It's what they do." Holt looked between them, desperate. "Then what's the plan? Wait here until they overwhelm us?" "The plan," Sarah said, "is to make them pay for every inch." More grenades came down the stairs, smoke this time, filling the basement with thick gray clouds that burned throats and stung eyes. The contractors advanced under cover of the smoke. Sarah fired into the cloud, relying on sound and muzzle flash to find targets. She hit one, maybe two, but there were too many. They breached the room. What followed was chaos. Close quarters combat in a confined space filled with civilians. The worst possible scenario. Sarah moved through the smoke like a ghost, using her knowledge of the room's layout to outmaneuver contractors who were seeing it for the first time. She caught one trying to flank Reeves's position and put him down with a rifle stock to the temple, turned and fired at another who was advancing on a group of huddled patients. The round caught him in the shoulder, spinning him into a medical cart. But there were too many. One of Reeves's men went down, clutching his leg and screaming. A nurse trying to reach a trapped patient took a round to the arm and collapsed. Sarah's magazine ran dry. She dropped it, slammed in a fresh one, and kept firing. A contractor emerged from the smoke directly in front of her, weapon raised. She was faster, 2-round center mass. He went down. But his partner was right behind him, and Sarah's rifle clicked empty. She didn't hesitate. Dropped the rifle and closed the distance, driving her palm into his nose. Cartilage crunched. He staggered back, and she swept his leg, grabbed his sidearm as he fell, and used it to drop another contractor advancing from her left. The smoke was starting to clear. Sarah counted bodies. 4 contractors down. But at least 6 still moving, and more might be coming. Reeves had blood running down his face from a cut above his eye. 2 of his men were injured. The civilians were terrified, some injured, all traumatized. This wasn't sustainable. Sarah grabbed Reeves by the arm. "We need to move them." "Where?" "The exits are sealed." "The loading dock, service tunnel." "That tunnel's been closed for years." "Then we open it." Reeves looked at her like she was insane. "That'll take time we don't have." "You have a better idea?" He didn't. Sarah turned to the crowd. "Everyone who can walk, get ready to move. Anyone who can't walk gets carried. We're leaving." "How?" Jessica, the young nurse, stared at her with wide eyes. "They're everywhere." "I'll handle them. You handle the patients. You can't fight all of them alone." Sarah met her eyes. "Watch me." She grabbed 2 smoke grenades from a downed contractor's vest and moved toward the stairwell. Reeves caught her arm. "This is suicide." "This is buying time. Get them to the loading dock. Blow the tunnel entrance if you have to. Just get them out." Sarah, "Do it, Nathan!" She pulled free and ran. The contractors were regrouping on the stairwell, preparing for another push. Sarah could hear them on the radio, coordinating, calling for reinforcements. She pulled the pins on both grenades and threw them up the stairs. Then she followed them into the smoke. What happened next would later be described by survivors as something out of a movie, or impossible, or the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. Sarah Garrett went to war. In the narrow confines of the stairwell, she used every advantage she had: superior knowledge of terrain, better training, the absolute certainty that came from having nothing left to lose. She hit them from angles they weren't expecting, used their own smoke against them, turned their numerical advantage into a liability by forcing them to fight in a space where only two could advance at a time. She took a round to the vest that knocked the wind out of her lungs, kept moving, took a knife across her forearm that burned like fire, ignored it. Her knuckles split open from hitting body armor, didn't care. She was operating on pure instinct now, her body moving through patterns burned into muscle memory through thousands of hours of brutal training. Block, strike, disarm, disable. Over and over, until the contractors started to hesitate, started to fear the invisible woman who fought like a demon in the smoke. But there were still too many. Sarah's vision started to blur from exhaustion. Her breathing came in ragged gasps. Blood ran down her arm, soaking her sleeve. She was going to lose. Then she heard it. Sirens. Lots of them. The contractors heard it too. Their radio chatter shifted from coordinated assault to confused questions. Multiple units responding, "SWAT team en route, abort, abort, fall back." They started to withdraw. Sarah didn't let them. She pursued them up the stairs, taking down stragglers, making sure they knew what it cost to attack her people. By the time she reached the ground floor, the contractors were gone, vanished into the night like ghosts, leaving behind only bodies and shell casings and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Sarah stood in the lobby, chest heaving, covered in blood. Some hers, most not, and listened to the approaching sirens. Police, FBI. Probably ATF and Homeland Security too, given the scale of the attack. The hospital looked like a war zone. Shattered glass, bullet holes in walls, overturned equipment, blood on the floors, and in the middle of it all, Sarah Calloway, the quiet nurse nobody had ever noticed, holding a smoking rifle and looking like death itself. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Reeves emerging from the basement, supporting one of his injured men. "They're out," he said. "Civilians are safe. Tunnel led to an old maintenance access point 3 blocks away. Emergency services are already there." Sarah nodded, suddenly exhausted. "You're hit," Reeves said, looking at her arm. "It's fine." "It's not fine. You need medical attention." "Later." She walked past him, heading for the exit, but stopped when she saw the crowd gathering outside. Police cars, news vans, crowds of people with cameras. The story was already breaking. She could see it on their faces, hear it in their excited chatter. Hospital under siege. Military nurse saves dozens. Secret soldier revealed. Her anonymity was gone, burned away in gunfire and smoke. Sarah Calloway was dead. And Sarah Garrett, the woman she'd tried to bury 6 years ago, was back whether she wanted to be or not. "You can't go out there," Reeves said quietly. "The moment you do, every camera in the state will be on you. Every intelligence agency will want to debrief you, and whoever ordered the hit on Vance will know exactly where to find you." "They already know where to find me." "Not officially. Right now you're still a ghost. Walk out those doors and you become a target." Sarah looked at him. "I've been a target since Kandahar. At least now I know who's shooting." She pushed through the doors. Immediately, reporters surged forward, shouting questions, cameras flashing. "True that you're former military. How many attackers did you... Where did you learn to kick?" Sarah ignored them all and kept walking. A police officer tried to stop her. "Ma'am, you need to give a statement. Later." "Ma'am, that's not..." Reeves appeared beside her, flashing his badge. "She's with me. Official federal business. Back off." The officer hesitated, then stepped aside. They made it to one of the black SUVs that Reeves's team had arrived in. Sarah climbed into the passenger seat, and Reeves got behind the wheel. He started the engine but didn't move. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere but here." "Not an option. We need to secure that drive, debrief you, and figure out who the hell just tried to turn a hospital into a mass grave." Sarah pulled the flash drive from her pocket and looked at it. Such a small thing. Barely bigger than her thumb. But containing enough information to destroy careers, topple agencies, maybe even bring down parts of the government. "What's on here, Nathan?" "Really?" Reeves's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know. Vance wouldn't tell me specifics, just said it was evidence of what happened in Kandahar and who was responsible." "You didn't ask for details?" "I did. He said the less I knew, the safer I'd be." Reeves looked at her. "He trusted you to know what to do with it." "That was a mistake." "Was it?" Sarah stared at the drive. She could destroy it, throw it away, let the past stay buried, but Rodriguez was dead. Kim was dead. 8 others from their unit were dead, and someone had gotten away with it for 6 years. She plugged the drive into her phone. The files loaded slowly. Documents, audio recordings, bank statements, emails. Sarah started reading. Her expression didn't change, but Reeves saw her grip tighten on the phone. "What is it?" "Names," Sarah said quietly. Vance documented everything. Defense contractors, Pentagon officials, senators, people who knew about the weapons trafficking and authorized the hit to cover it up. "How high does it go?" "High enough that we're both dead if this gets out the wrong way." Reeves exhaled. "Then we need to be smart about how we—" His phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his face went pale. "Who is it?" Sarah asked. "My CO. Direct line." "Don't answer it." "I have to." "Nathan," he answered. "Colonel Reeves." Sarah couldn't hear the voice on the other end, but she watched Reeves' expression shift from tense to shocked to something that looked like betrayal. "Yes, sir," he said finally. "Understood." He ended the call. Sarah waited. "I've been ordered to bring you in," Reeves said quietly. "Immediate custody. Federal holding facility pending investigation into unauthorized military action on domestic soil." "You can't be serious." "They're saying you acted without authority, that you engaged in combat operations outside the scope of defensive action, that you're a rogue operative who needs to be contained." "I saved those people." "I know. But someone very powerful wants you silenced, and they're using official channels to do it." Sarah looked at the hospital, where police and federal agents were starting to swarm, looked at the phone in her hand containing evidence that could bring down some of the most powerful people in the country, looked at Reeves, her former commanding officer, the man who'd given her a second life. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Reeves stared straight ahead, jaw tight. "My duty." "Which is?" He didn't answer. Sarah reached for the door handle. "Don't," Reeves said. "You just said you're taking me in." "I said I was ordered to. I didn't say I would." Sarah paused. "Nathan, get out of the car, Sarah. Take the drive. Run." "They'll court-martial you." "Probably." "They'll destroy your career." "It's already destroyed. The moment I helped you fake your death, I crossed a line. This is just the bill coming due." He looked at her, and for the first time she saw real fear in his eyes. "But you need to survive, because you're the only one left who knows the truth and can prove it." "I can't do this alone." "You won't have to. I'll buy you time, draw their attention, make noise. You go underground and figure out who you can trust with that information. And if I can't trust anyone, then burn it all down." Sarah opened the door and stepped out. Reeves rolled down the window. "There's a safe house in Ridgefield. Address is in the glove box. Cash, weapons, clean documents. Use it." "Why are you helping me?" "Because Kandahar wasn't your fault. And because 12 Marines died thinking their country sent them on a legitimate mission. They deserve justice, even if it cost me everything." Sarah nodded once and disappeared into the crowd. Reeves watched her go, then pulled out his phone and made a call. "This is Colonel Reeves. I have eyes on the target. She's heading north on foot. Mobilize all units for pursuit." He gave them the wrong direction. Then he put the car in drive and headed toward the hospital, ready to face whatever came next. Sarah moved through Millbrook like a ghost, using alleys and side streets, avoiding cameras and crowds. Her arm throbbed where the knife had cut her, and her ribs ached from the round she'd taken to the vest. But she kept moving. The safe house was 40 minutes away on foot. She'd have to cross the river, cut through the industrial district, and hope nobody recognized her before she got there. She made it 3 blocks before her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her hesitate. She answered without speaking. A voice came through. Male, calm, professional. "Sarah Garrett, we need to talk." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what you're carrying, and someone who can help you understand what it really means." "I'm not interested." "You should be, because what you think you know about Kandahar, you're wrong. And if you go public with that drive without understanding the full picture, you'll start a war that'll make tonight look like a training exercise." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "Talk." "Not over the phone. There's a coffee shop on 5th and Main, Sullivan's. Meet me there in 1 hour." "Why would I do that?" Because I'm the one who sent Reeves to save you 6 years ago. And because I'm the only person left alive who knows why Kandahar really happened. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the alley, phone in hand, trying to decide. It could be a trap. Probably was a trap. But the voice had known details that only a handful of people should know, including the fact that Reeves had been sent, that her extraction hadn't been his idea. If that was true, then someone else had been pulling strings from the beginning, someone who wanted her alive. The question was why. Sarah checked the address of the safe house, then the location of Sullivan's coffee shop. They were in opposite directions. She had to choose safety and weapons and time to plan, or answers and the possibility of walking into an ambush. Sarah started walking toward the coffee shop because she'd spent 6 years running from the truth and she was done. Whatever was waiting for her at Sullivan's, answers or bullets or something worse, she'd face it head on, the way she should have done 6 years ago. The coffee shop was nearly empty when she arrived, just a tired barista cleaning tables and an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Sarah scanned the room, hand near the concealed pistol she'd taken from one of the contractors. Then she saw him, sitting in a back booth, wearing an expensive suit and drinking black coffee like he had all the time in the world. She recognized him immediately. Not his face. She'd never seen his face, but she recognized what he represented, because the man waiting for her was wearing a Pentagon security badge that identified him as working directly for the Secretary of Defense. And sitting next to him, looking nervous and out of place, was Dr. Marcus Holt. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. Holt saw her and stood up quickly. "Wait, please, just listen. Give me one reason not to walk away right now." "Because I owe you an apology," Holt said, "and because he gestured to the man in the suit, knows who's really behind everything that happened tonight." The man in the suit smiled. "Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss." Sarah didn't sit. "Start talking." "My name is Richard Dalton. I'm with the Office of Special Investigations, and I've been tracking the Kandahar cover-up for 3 years. Why? Because someone very powerful used that operation to eliminate witnesses to a weapons trafficking ring that funneled American military hardware to hostile nations, and that same person is now trying to eliminate everyone who survived. I know all this. Vance told me. Corporal Vance told you part of it, but he didn't know the full scope." Dalton leaned forward. "The trafficking ring? It wasn't run by contractors. It was run by someone inside the Joint Chiefs, someone who's been using their position to funnel weapons and intelligence for years. And Kandahar was just the beginning." Sarah felt cold. "Who?" "General Marcus Webb, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations." The name hit like a punch. Webb was a legend, war hero, Medal of Honor recipient, the kind of officer whose picture hung in recruiting stations. "You're lying," Sarah said. "I wish I was, but the evidence on that drive, it's incomplete. Vance documented the contractors and the money trail, but he didn't have access to the military orders that authorized everything, orders that came directly from Webb's office." "Then why are you telling me this instead of arresting him?" "Because Webb has protection at the highest levels. People who benefit from his activities. People who will burn the evidence and everyone connected to it before they let this go public." Dalton's expression hardened. "Including you? What do you want from me?" "Cooperation. Testimony. Help building a case that can't be buried or dismissed." "In exchange for what?" "Your life. Protection. A chance to finish what Vance started." Sarah looked at Holt. "Why is he here?" Holt cleared his throat. "Because I was wrong about everything, and because Mr. Dalton asked me to help convince you that this is real." "How would you know it's real?" "Because they tried to kill me too." Sarah stared at him. Holt pulled up his sleeve, revealing a bandage on his forearm. 20 minutes after you left the hospital, someone tried to inject me with something in the parking lot. Security stopped them, but..." He swallowed. "Mr. Dalton says they were trying to silence me before I could talk to investigators." "Why would they target you?" "Because I saw what you did tonight. Because I can testify that you were defending patients, not attacking them. And because..." His voice cracked. "Because I've been a fool. I let my ego blind me to what was really happening. I tried to have you arrested when I should have been protecting you." Sarah said nothing. "I was wrong," Holt continued, "and I'm sorry. And I know that doesn't mean anything after what I put you through, but it's true. Dalton cleared his throat. Dr. Holt has agreed to provide testimony about tonight's events. But his word alone isn't enough. We need your testimony, and we need that drive. Sarah's hand stayed near her weapon. How do I know you're really OSI? How do I know this isn't another setup? You don't. But ask yourself this, if I wanted you dead, why go through the trouble of this conversation? Why not just have you shot the moment you walked through that door? It was a fair point. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat, but she didn't relax. What's the play? We bring Webb down, publicly, thoroughly. We expose the entire trafficking network and everyone who benefited from it. We make sure what happened to your unit can never happen again. That's ambitious. It's necessary. And dangerous. People like Webb don't go down quietly. No, they don't. Which is why we need to move fast. Webb knows you have the drive. He knows Vance is still alive. He's already mobilizing assets to eliminate both of you before you can go public. So what's the timeline? 72 hours. We have a federal grand jury convening in 3 days. If we can present evidence, testimony, documentation, the works, they'll issue indictments that even Webb's friends can't stop. And if we can't, then Webb buries this, you disappear, and everyone who died in Kandahar stays unavenged. Sarah looked at the flash drive in her hand. 12 Marines, 4 survivors, 2 dead, 1 barely alive. And her. The one who'd been running for 6 years because she couldn't face the truth. I want protection for Vance, she said. Be real protection. Not contractors, not local cops, federal marshals, round the clock. Done. And I want immunity. Full immunity for everything that happened tonight. You were acting in defense of others. There's nothing to immunize. Holt tried to have me arrested for assault. There are 5 injured contractors claiming I attacked them without cause. Dalton smiled thinly. Those contractors work for Black Ridge Solutions, which is owned by a shell company that traces back to General Webb. Once that connection is public, their testimony becomes worthless. What about Reeves? He disobeyed orders to help me escape. Colonel Reeves is currently in federal custody. But if this case goes the way we hope, his actions will be reclassified as appropriate initiative under extraordinary circumstances. Sarah studied Dalton's face, looking for the lie, the angle, the trap. She didn't find one, but that didn't mean it wasn't there. I need time to think, she said. You don't have time. Webb will make his move within hours, possibly minutes. Then I'll think fast. Sarah stood and walked out of the coffee shop. Behind her, she heard Holt start to follow, but Dalton stopped him. She made it half a block before she realized she was being followed. Not by Dalton's people, by someone else. She caught the reflection in a store window. 2 men, keeping pace 50 feet back, hands in pockets. Sarah turned down an alley. They followed. She broke into a run. So did they. Sarah's injuries screamed protest, but she pushed through the pain. She could hear their footsteps gaining, hear their breathing. She reached a fire escape and went up, taking the metal stairs 2 at a time. They were right behind her. Sarah reached the roof and kept running, jumping across a narrow gap to the next building. One of them made the jump. The other didn't, his scream cutting off abruptly. Sarah didn't look back. She reached the edge of the building and looked down. 3-story drop. No fire escape. She turned. The remaining pursuer was 10 feet away, breathing hard, gun drawn. End of the line, he said. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. Don't, he warned. I'm faster. Prove it. He smiled and raised the gun. Then his head snapped back and he collapsed. Sarah spun to see Colonel Reeves standing on the fire escape, rifle raised. Told you to run, he said. I did run. Running didn't work. Then maybe it's time to stop running. He lowered the rifle and climbed onto the roof. Sarah stared at him. You're supposed to be in custody. I was. Then I realized I'd rather be court-martialed for helping you than live with myself for not. Nathan, Webb's people are everywhere, Sarah. They're watching every federal agency, every safe house, every escape route. You can't run from this, and you can't fight it alone. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we do what we should have done 6 years ago. We take the evidence, we go public, and we force their hand. Dalton said, Dalton's a good man, but he's operating through official channels, and official channels are compromised. Webb's had years to plant people, build leverage, create cover. Reeves stepped closer. You want justice for our unit? You want to make sure this never happens again? Then we bypass the system entirely. How? Reeves pulled out his phone and showed her a contact. Sarah read the name and felt her stomach drop. You can't be serious. Dead serious. That's a journalist. You're talking about leaking classified information to the press. I'm talking about making sure the truth gets out before Webb can bury it. We give them everything, documents, testimony, evidence. We put it all out there where it can't be hidden or denied. That'll destroy both our careers. Our careers are already destroyed, but at least this way, we go down fighting for something that matters. Sarah looked at the unconscious pursuer, then at the city lights spreading out below them. She thought about Vance, barely alive in a hospital bed, about Rodriguez and Kim, dead in accidents that weren't accidents, about 12 Marines who died thinking they were serving their country, about 6 years of hiding, running, pretending to be someone else. She pulled out the flash drive. Make the call, she said. Reeves's expression shifted, relief mixed with grim determination. You're sure? No, but I'm done being invisible. He dialed. Someone answered on the second ring. This is Colonel Nathan Reeves, Defense Intelligence Agency. I have information about a cover-up involving weapons trafficking, assassination of U.S. military personnel, and corruption at the highest levels of the Pentagon. Are you interested? A pause. Then Reeves smiled. Good. We'll need protection, a secure location, and your best investigative team, and we'll need it within the hour. He ended the call and looked at Sarah. It's done. No going back now. Sarah nodded. No going back? Below them, sirens wailed. Helicopters circled in the distance. The city was waking up to the biggest military scandal in decades, and it didn't even know it yet. But it would. Soon. Sarah Garrett had spent 6 years being invisible. Now she was going to make sure everyone saw exactly what had happened to her unit and exactly who was responsible. Reeves started toward the fire escape, but Sarah grabbed his arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for saving me, for believing me, for risking everything. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won. But we're fighting. That's more than we were doing yesterday. They descended the fire escape together and disappeared into the night. And in a Pentagon office 200 miles away, General Marcus Webb received a phone call that made his blood run cold. Sir, we have a problem. Garrett and Reeves are going to the press. They have the drive. They have testimony. And they're moving now. Webb's grip tightened on the phone. Where are they? Unknown. They've gone dark. Then find them. Use every resource, every asset, and when you do, Webb's voice dropped to something cold and final. Make sure they don't reach any journalists alive. Sir, if we move against them now, I don't care about the optics. I don't care about the investigation. If that information goes public, everything I've built for the past decade collapses. So find them and end this. Tonight, Webb hung up and stared at the wall of commendations and medals that represented a career built on honor, sacrifice, and service. A career that was really built on lies, murder, and betrayal. And he'd do anything to protect it. Anything at all. The safe house wasn't much, a converted warehouse in the industrial district with reinforced doors and windows that didn't open. But it had power, running water, and most importantly, it wasn't on any official registry. Sarah sat at a metal table in the center of the room, the flash drive connected to a laptop, while a woman she'd never met before copied files onto 3 separate encrypted servers. The journalist's name was Catherine Pierce, and she looked exactly like someone who'd spent 20 years chasing stories nobody else wanted to touch. Gray hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain, eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. How long? Sarah asked. Catherine didn't look up from the screen. For what? Copying the files or verifying them? Both. Files are done. Verification will take days. Maybe weeks. We don't have weeks. Then we go with what we can confirm in the next 6 hours and let the rest shake out later. Catherine finally looked at Sarah. But understand, if any of this turns out to be fabricated or manipulated, it'll destroy the entire story and everyone connected to it. It's real. You believe it's real. That's different. Reeves stepped forward. I've seen the bank statements. The routing numbers match accounts tied to known shell companies. The audio recordings have metadata that places them at specific Pentagon meetings. This isn't amateur hour. Catherine pulled up one of the audio files and hit play. A voice filled the room, male, authoritative, unmistakable if you'd spent any time around senior military leadership. Casualties are acceptable as long as the objective is met. CMU-12 has access to sensitive information from multiple theaters. If even one of them talks to the wrong people, another voice, younger, uncertain. Sir, there are people. Decorated medics. We can and we will. Designate the target building, feed bad coordinates to air support, and make sure the response time is delayed long enough for the hostiles to do their job. By morning, it'll look like another bad operation in a war full of bad operations. Static. Then the first voice again. And if any of them survive? They won't. But if they do, we have contingencies. The recording ended. Catherine's expression hadn't changed, but Sarah saw her hands tighten on the edge of the table. That's General Webb, Reeves said quietly, speaking to his aide, recorded 3 days before the Kandahar operation. Where did Vance get this? Webb's aide kept insurance. When he died in a car accident 6 months ago, Vance managed to access his personal effects before they were sanitized. How? He was sleeping with the aide's sister. She gave him access to a storage unit. Catherine pulled off her glasses. So we've got audio of a general ordering the death of American soldiers, financial records showing payments to contractors who carried out subsequent assassinations, and testimony from survivors. That's enough to burn down the Pentagon. It's enough to start, Sarah said. But Webb has protection. People who will claim the recordings are fake, the documents are fabricated, the testimony is unreliable. Which is why we need more than just evidence. We need a narrative that's impossible to dismiss. Catherine looked at Sarah. We need your story. All of it. What happened that night in Kandahar? What you saw? What you did? Why you disappeared? Sarah's jaw tightened. I know. You don't want to relive it. Nobody would. But right now, you're not just a witness. You're the face of this story. The nurse who survived an assassination attempt and came back to save a hospital full of people. The soldier who was declared dead but refused to stay buried. Catherine leaned forward. Give me that story, and I can make it bulletproof. And if I don't? Then Webb's lawyers tear apart the evidence piece by piece, claim it's all a conspiracy theory, and the whole thing dies before it even reaches trial. Sarah looked at Reeves. He nodded once. She took a breath and started talking. Mutt. 3 hours later, Catherine had 40 pages of notes, 2 hours of recorded testimony, and a story that would break every major news outlet in the country. I need to make some calls, she said. Verify sources, cross-check facts, get statements from other people connected to the case. How long? Reeves asked. Noon tomorrow. Maybe sooner if I can reach my contacts at the Defense Department. You have contacts at Defense? I've been covering military corruption for 15 years. I have contacts everywhere. Catherine started packing up her equipment. There's a hotel 3 blocks from here. The Bellevue. Room 412 is registered under a name that won't trace back to me. Stay there tonight. Don't use phones, don't order room service, don't do anything that creates a record. What about Vance? Sarah asked. Dalton's people moved him to a secure facility an hour ago. Federal protection. He's safe. You trust Dalton? I trust that his career depends on this case succeeding. That's close enough. Catherine headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. Once this story breaks, your lives change forever. No more hiding, no more anonymity. You'll be targets, celebrities, witnesses, heroes, villains, all of it at once. Make sure you're ready for that. She left. The warehouse fell silent. Sarah sat down on a folding chair and put her head in her hands. Reeves gave her a moment, then spoke quietly. You okay? No? Anything I can do? Not unless you can turn back time. If I could do that, I'd go back to Kandahar and stop the operation before it started. Sarah looked up. Would you? Really? What do you mean? I mean, if Kandahar never happened, we wouldn't have this evidence. We wouldn't know about the trafficking. We wouldn't be able to stop Webb. She laughed bitterly. 12 people had to die so we could learn the truth. How do you live with that? By making sure they didn't die for nothing. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Sarah stood. Let's go. I need sleep before tomorrow turns into a nightmare. The Bellevue Hotel was exactly the kind of place that didn't ask questions. Worn carpet, flickering lights, a front desk clerk who barely looked up when they walked past. Room 412 had 2 beds, a bathroom with questionable plumbing, and a view of a brick wall. But it was warm and dry, and nobody was shooting at them. Sarah collapsed onto one of the beds without bothering to remove her shoes. Reeves checked the locks, wedged a chair under the door handle, and set his phone to wake him every 2 hours. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow's going to be... His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and went pale. What? Sarah sat up. Message from Dalton. Vance is gone. Gone how? Dead? Missing. Someone breached the secure facility 30 minutes ago, killed 3 federal marshals and extracted him. Sarah was on her feet instantly. Webb! Has to be. He's tying up loose ends before the story breaks. Then we need to move. Now. Move where? We don't know where they took him. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Then we find out. How? The same way Webb's been tracking us, by using people who owe us favors. She pulled out her phone, the encrypted one Reeves had given her, and dialed a number from memory. Someone answered on the 3rd ring. Who is this? A woman's voice, suspicious and tired. Jessica. It's Sarah from the hospital. A pause. Holy shit, are you okay? The news is saying, I need your help, now. No questions. What do you need? Access to the hospital's security footage, specifically feeds from tonight showing everyone who visited Vance's room after the attack. That's restricted. Administration locked everything down after... Jessica, I saved your life tonight. I'm calling that in. Another pause. Give me 10 minutes. The line went dead. Reeves stared at her. You really think a nurse can get past federal security protocols? Jessica's smarter than she looks, and she's got access to systems most people don't know exist. Sarah grabbed the laptop Catherine had left behind. Hospital IT is always 3 steps behind actual hospital staff when it comes to workarounds. That's a lot of faith in someone you barely know. I don't have a lot of options right now. 9 minutes later, Sarah's phone buzzed with an encrypted file transfer. She opened it. Security footage filled the screen, grainy, time-stamped, showing the hallway outside Vance's room from multiple angles. Sarah scrubbed through the footage, watching nurses and doctors come and go, watching Reeves's team set up guard positions, watching the chaos after the attack. Then she saw it. A man in a suit and federal credentials, walking into Vance's room 40 minutes after the main assault ended. He stayed inside for 3 minutes, then left. Sarah zoomed in on his face. I know him, Reeves said. That's Marcus Tillman. He works for Dalton, OSI investigator. You sure? Positive. I've seen him at briefings. Sarah's stomach turned cold. Then Dalton's compromised. Or Tillman is working for Webb. Either way, they knew exactly where Vance was because we told them. Sarah slammed the laptop shut. We led them right to him. We couldn't have known. We should have. Sarah stood and started pacing. Webb's been running this operation for years. You think he didn't have people planted in every oversight agency, every investigative unit? We handed Vance to them on a silver platter. Then we get him back. How? We don't know where they took him. We don't know who we can trust, and we're running out of time. Reeves's phone buzzed again. He looked at it, and his expression shifted. Catherine, she wants to meet. When? Now. Says it's urgent. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Let's go. Boom. They met Catherine in an all-night diner 6 blocks from the hotel. She was sitting in a back booth with her laptop open and 3 empty coffee cups in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Join the club, Sarah replied, sliding into the booth. Vance is missing, probably dead by now. I know, that's not the problem. Then what is? Catherine turned the laptop around. The screen showed a news article from an hour ago. Breaking news, national coverage, the kind of story that dominated every outlet. The headline read, Military whistleblower fabricates evidence in Pentagon corruption case. Sarah's blood ran cold. Keep reading, Catherine said. The article detailed how Corporal Jamie Vance, a troubled veteran with a history of PTSD and substance abuse, had allegedly fabricated evidence against General Marcus Webb as part of a vendetta stemming from a performance review years earlier. It cited unnamed Pentagon sources, included excerpts from Vance's medical records showing psychological instability, and featured a statement from Webb himself expressing sadness that a once promising soldier had fallen so far. "This is bullshit," Sarah said. "Vance was investigating." "I know, but they've poisoned the well. By the time we publish our story, the narrative will already be set. Vance is crazy. The evidence is fake. Anyone supporting him is either deluded or complicit." "Then we prove it's real." "How?" "Vance is missing. The physical documents could be dismissed as forgeries. The audio recordings could be claimed as deepfakes. Without Vance's testimony corroborating everything, it's all circumstantial." Reeves leaned forward. "What about Sarah's testimony? She was there. She survived the operation. She's a witness, not a participant in the trafficking. Her story proves Kandahar was a bad op, but it doesn't directly connect Webb to the larger conspiracy." Catherine pulled off her glasses. "I'm not saying we don't publish. I'm saying we need to be realistic about what happens when we do. Webb's people are already 3 steps ahead. They're controlling the narrative before we even get ours out there." Sarah stared at the article, at Webb's carefully crafted statement, at the character assassination of a man who'd risked everything to expose the truth. "There has to be something," she said, "some piece of evidence that's undeniable." Catherine hesitated. "There might be, but you're not going to like it." "Tell me." "The audio recording of Webb ordering the Kandahar hit? I sent it to a forensic analyst I trust, someone who specializes in authentication for legal proceedings." And she says it's real. No signs of manipulation, editing, or AI generation. The metadata checks out. The voice pattern matches Webb's known recordings with 98% certainty. That's good news. It would be, except there's a problem. The recording was made on a device that belonged to Webb's aide, the one who died in the car accident, and that aide's sister, the one who gave Vance access to the storage unit. Sarah's chest tightened. "What about her?" "She died 2 days ago. Carbon monoxide poisoning in her apartment. Police are calling it an accident." The diner suddenly felt very cold. "Webb's cleaning house," Reeves said quietly, "faster than we anticipated." Catherine closed her laptop. "Which means we're running out of witnesses, out of evidence, and out of time. Then we go public now, tonight, before he can kill anyone else. With what? A story that's already been undermined? Evidence that can be dismissed as fabricated? Testimony from people who've either disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances?" Catherine shook her head. "I'm a journalist, not a miracle worker. I can publish this story, but without something concrete tying Webb directly to current crimes, not 6-year-old operations, it'll be buried in 24 hours. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "So we just give up?" "I didn't say that. I said we need something stronger. Something Webb can't explain away." "Like what?" Catherine met her eyes. "Like catching him in the act. Juan, the plan was insane." Sarah said as much when Catherine finished explaining it. "You want us to draw Webb out by making him think we're vulnerable. Then what? Record him confessing? That only works in movies." "No," Catherine said. "We make him commit a crime so blatant, so public, that he can't bury it. We force him to show his hand in a way that creates undeniable evidence." "How?" "By threatening the one thing he can't afford to lose. His reputation." Reeves frowned. "You're talking about the medal ceremony?" Catherine nodded. "Tomorrow at noon, Webb is receiving the Distinguished Service Medal at the Pentagon. Full military honors, press coverage, live broadcast. It's the culmination of his career. And you want us to disrupt it. I want you to confront him, publicly, on camera. Force him to respond to accusations he can't ignore. He'll have security. Probably kill us on sight. Not if you're surrounded by cameras and witnesses. Not if you make it clear that killing you will only prove you're telling the truth." Catherine leaned forward. "Think about it. Webb spent 6 years building a narrative where he's the hero, the distinguished general, the patriot. If you stand up in front of that audience and accuse him of murdering 12 Marines, he has 2 choices: deny it and look guilty, or try to silence you and prove you're right. This is suicide, Sarah said. This is the only play we have left. Sarah looked at Reeves. You're the military strategist. What do you think? Reeves was quiet for a long moment. I think it's the worst plan I've ever heard. And I think it might actually work. Why? Because Webb's greatest strength is also his weakness. He's arrogant. He believes he's untouchable. If we challenge him in his moment of triumph, in front of everyone he's spent his career trying to impress, Reeves smiled grimly. He won't be able to resist responding, and when he does, he'll make a mistake. That's a lot of assumptions. You have a better idea? Sarah didn't. Catherine pulled out a folder. I've already made arrangements. Press credentials for both of you. You'll be in the audience as journalists covering the ceremony. When Webb takes the stage, you stand up and confront him. I'll have cameras positioned to capture everything. And if he has us arrested, then we get our confrontation on record before they drag you out. Either way, the story breaks. Sarah took the press credentials and stared at them. Her photo looked strange, professional, composed, nothing like the exhausted woman sitting in a diner at 3 a.m. planning an ambush. There's one more thing, Catherine said. If this works, if Webb takes the bait, there's no going back. Your lives will never be normal again. You'll be famous, infamous, protected, threatened, celebrated, and hunted all at once. Make sure you're ready for that. Sarah thought about the last 6 years, the hiding, the lying, the pretending to be someone else. I stopped being ready for normal a long time ago, she said. Eek. The Pentagon at noon looked exactly like something out of a recruitment poster. Flags snapping in the breeze, honor guard in perfect formation, rows of chairs filled with military brass, politicians, and journalists. And at the center of it all, General Marcus Webb, standing at attention while the Secretary of Defense read his commendation. Sarah sat in the third row, press credentials clipped to her jacket, a microphone disguised as a pen in her pocket. Reeves sat 2 rows behind her, his face carefully neutral. Catherine was somewhere in the press pool, cameras ready. The secretary droned on about valor, sacrifice, and dedication to duty. Webb stood there looking like a statue of everything the military was supposed to represent. Sarah's hands trembled slightly. She forced them still. The secretary finished his remarks and gestured for Webb to approach. Webb stepped forward to accept the medal. The audience applauded. This was it. Sarah stood up. Every head in the audience turned. Webb's eyes locked onto hers, and for just a fraction of a second, she saw recognition flicker across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by confusion and irritation. General Webb, Sarah said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. Before you accept that medal, I have a question. Security started moving immediately, but the cameras were already recording. Webb held up a hand, stopping them. Who are you? Sarah Garrett, Combat Medical Unit 12, Kandahar Operation. You remember? The unit you ordered killed 6 years ago. Gasps rippled through the audience. Webb's expression didn't change. I'm afraid you're mistaken. I have no knowledge of... You have every knowledge. You ordered the hit. You falsified the intelligence. You delayed air support. And when 4 of us survived, you spent 6 years hunting us down. Sarah pulled out the flash drive and held it up. I have proof. Audio recordings, bank statements, documentation of every murder you ordered to cover up your trafficking operation. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Reporters shouting questions, security converging, the Secretary of Defense looking between Sarah and Webb with growing horror. But Webb stayed calm, too calm. He smiled. Ms. Garrett, I understand you've been through a traumatic experience. PTSD can cause all sorts of delusions, but I assure you, I'm not delusional, and I'm not alone. Reeves stood up. Colonel Nathan Reeves, Defense Intelligence Agency, I corroborate everything she just said. Webb is a traitor and a murderer. More chaos. Webb's smile didn't waver. Colonel Reeves is currently under investigation for dereliction of duty. His testimony is compromised. Then what about this? Catherine's voice rang out from the press pool. She held up a tablet showing the audio recording. This is your voice, General. Ordering the deaths of American soldiers. Care to explain? Webb's smile finally cracked. That recording is fabricated. Anyone with basic audio editing software could... It's been authenticated by 3 independent forensic analysts. Would you like their reports? Security was trying to reach Sarah now, but the crowd was too dense, too chaotic. Webb's face hardened. This is a coordinated smear campaign by discredited individuals trying to... Then explain the bank transfers, Catherine interrupted. Explain the shell companies. Explain why every survivor of Kandahar, except Sarah Garrett, has died under suspicious circumstances in the past 6 months. I don't have to explain anything to... Explain Jamie Vance. Sarah's voice cut through everything. You had him kidnapped last night. Where is he? For the first time, Webb looked genuinely rattled. I have no knowledge of... You ordered his extraction from federal custody. You ordered the deaths of 3 federal marshals. Where is he now? Webb's jaw tightened. You're making serious accusations without... I'm making accusations I can prove. And the only reason you're still standing here instead of in handcuffs is because you've spent 6 years building protection. But that protection ends today. Security finally reached Sarah. Hands grabbed her arms. But the cameras kept recording. Webb stepped forward, and for just a moment the mask slipped. Sarah saw the rage beneath, the calculation, the cold certainty of a man who'd killed before and would kill again. You've made a terrible mistake, Webb said quietly. Both of you. The only mistake, Sarah replied, was thinking you could get away with this forever. They dragged her away. Dragged Reeves away too. But the damage was done. The confrontation was recorded. Broadcast. Shared across every platform before Webb's people could stop it. Within an hour, the story was everywhere. Within 2 hours, the Pentagon issued a statement announcing a full investigation. Within 3 hours, Webb's lawyers released a response denying all allegations. But it didn't matter. The truth was out. And it was spreading faster than they could contain it. Done. Sarah sat in a holding cell at the Pentagon security facility, waiting. They'd taken her phone, her credentials, everything except the clothes on her back. But they couldn't take what she'd already done. The door opened. Richard Dalton walked in, looking tired and furious. That was incredibly stupid, he said. It worked. It could have gotten you killed. But it didn't. Dalton sat down across from her. You know Webb's already claiming this is a conspiracy. Says you're a disgruntled former soldier with a grudge. Says the evidence is fabricated. Says Reeves put you up to it. Let him say whatever he wants. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence that hasn't been verified in a court of law. Evidence that could be challenged, dismissed, or buried if the right people apply the right pressure. Is that what you're here to tell me? That we failed? No. Dalton pulled out a tablet. I'm here to tell you that 2 hours ago, federal agents raided one of Webb's shell companies. They found Jamie Vance alive in a warehouse outside the city. Sarah's breath caught. He's alive. Barely. They'd beaten him pretty badly, but he's talking, and he's corroborating everything on that drive. So we have him. Not yet, but we're close. Webb's protection is crumbling. 3 senators who supported him have already distanced themselves. 2 Pentagon officials have resigned, and the Joint Chiefs are calling for an immediate review of his entire command history. That's not enough. He needs to be arrested. He will be. But these things take time. Due process. Evidence chains. We can't just... He ordered the murder of federal marshals last night. That's not ancient history. That's current charges, which we're building the case for, but what? You're going to let him walk while you build your perfect case? Dalton's expression hardened. I'm going to make sure when we take him down, he stays down. That means doing this right. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to scream that doing it right had let Webb operate freely for 6 years. But she was too tired. How long do I stay here, she asked. Until we finish processing your statement, probably another few hours. Dalton stood. For what it's worth, what you did today took guts. Stupid, reckless guts, but guts nonetheless. He left. Sarah leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. Somewhere in this building, Webb was probably doing the same thing. Sitting in some comfortable office, surrounded by lawyers, planning his next move. But for the first time in 6 years, Sarah wasn't running. She was waiting. And that made all the difference. Look, they released her 6 hours later with a warning to stay available for questioning. Catherine was waiting outside with Reeves. You're all over the news, Catherine said. Every network is covering the story. Some are calling you a hero. Others are calling you a conspiracy theorist. Most are just confused. What about Webb? Under investigation. Restricted to Pentagon grounds pending review. His security clearance has been suspended. So he's still free. For now, Sarah looked at Reeves. What about you? Suspended pending investigation? Possible court-martial? The usual. He smiled slightly. Worth it. They walked to Catherine's car in silence. As they drove away from the Pentagon, Sarah's phone buzzed, the secure one Reeves had given her, which they'd returned along with her other belongings. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her hesitate. She answered without speaking. A voice came through. Familiar. Weak. Lieutenant? Sarah's heart stopped. Vance? Yeah. Listen, I don't have much time. They're moving me to a secure medical facility, but I needed to tell you something. What? The flash drive I gave you? That's not everything. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? I kept a backup. Hidden. Insurance in case something happened to me. Where? Millbrook, your old apartment, behind the bathroom mirror. There's a loose tile. The drive is taped inside the wall. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I didn't know if I could trust anyone, but after what you did today, his voice cracked. You're the only one I trust with this. What's on it? Everything. Names, dates, operations, not just Kandahar. Every trafficking deal Webb's been involved in for the past decade. Every politician he's bought, every official he's compromised, every murder he's ordered. A pause. It's enough to bring down half the Pentagon. Vance, get it. Keep it safe. And if anything happens to me, make sure it gets out. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone. Reeves noticed. What's wrong? We need to go to Millbrook. Now. Why? Because there's another drive, and if we don't get it first, Webb will. Catherine hit the gas. They reached Sarah's old apartment just after sunset. The building looked exactly the same as when she'd left it. Run down, forgettable, the kind of place landlords rented to people who didn't ask questions. Sarah led them upstairs, her heart pounding. The apartment door was unlocked. That was wrong. She pushed it open carefully. The apartment had been searched, furniture overturned, cabinets emptied, walls torn open. Someone had been here first. Sarah ran to the bathroom and pulled the mirror off the wall. The tile Vance mentioned was loose, just like he'd said, but the hollow space behind it was empty. Sarah's stomach dropped. They got it, she said quietly. They got the backup drive. Reeves checked the rest of the apartment. Whoever was here, they're long gone. But they were thorough. Catherine stood in the doorway, phone pressed to her ear. I'm getting reports that Webb left Pentagon grounds 30 minutes ago. Against orders. Security tried to stop him, but he had supporters who let him through. Where is he now? Unknown. His security detail lost track of him near Arlington. Sarah's blood ran cold. He has the drive, she said. He knows we know about it, and he's running, or preparing to destroy everyone connected to it. Reeves pulled out his phone. I need to call Dalton. If Webb's gone rogue, the window exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere. Sarah hit the floor by instinct. Gunfire erupted from outside. Suppressed weapons, multiple shooters. Reeves returned fire, driving the attackers back. Catherine scrambled behind the couch. What the hell? Webb's contractors. Sarah grabbed Catherine and pulled her toward the door. Move! They made it into the hallway just as the apartment erupted in flames, incendiary rounds designed to destroy evidence. Sarah's old home burned behind them as they ran down the stairs and out into the street. A black SUV screeched around the corner. Reeves pushed them behind a parked car. Get down! The SUV's windows rolled down, but instead of gunfire, a voice called out, Get in! Now! Sarah recognized the voice, Richard Dalton. She hesitated for half a second, then made the call. They ran for the SUV and piled in. Dalton hit the gas before the doors were even closed. What the hell are you doing here? Reeves demanded. Saving your lives. Webb just issued an order to his remaining contractors. Kill everyone connected to the investigation. No witnesses. He can't do that. He's under investigation. He's desperate, and desperate men don't care about orders. Dalton swerved around a corner. I've got a team moving to secure Vance, but Webb knows where he is. We're out of time. Sarah's mind raced. The second drive. Webb has it. I know, which means he has leverage. He can destroy it, leak it selectively, Use it to bargain for immunity. We need to find him before he makes that move. How? He could be anywhere. Dalton's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. He's at the Lincoln Memorial, asking to meet with you. Sarah stared at him. Why? He says he wants to negotiate. You in exchange for the evidence. Says if you don't show, he'll disappear and take everything with him. It's a trap. Obviously, but it's also an opportunity. Dalton looked at her in the rearview mirror. He wants to end this face to face. We can use that. Or he'll just kill me and destroy the evidence anyway. Not if we're prepared, not if we control the environment. Sarah looked at Reeves, at Catherine, at Dalton. This is insane, she said. I know, Dalton replied, but it's also the only play we have left. Sarah closed her eyes and thought about the 12 Marines who died in Kandahar, about Rodriguez and Kim, about Vance, barely alive in a hospital bed, about 6 years of running and hiding and pretending to be someone else. Fine, she said. Set it up. Dalton made the call, and Sarah Garrett prepared to face the man who tried to erase her. One last time. The Lincoln Memorial at night looked like something carved from ice and shadow. Floodlights made the marble glow white against the black sky, and tourists had been cleared out hours ago by federal agents who didn't offer explanations. Sarah stood at the bottom of the steps, looking up at the massive columns. Somewhere up there, General Marcus Webb was waiting. Dalton's team had positioned sharpshooters on nearby rooftops. Undercover agents mixed with the few remaining civilians. Every angle covered, every exit monitored. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, Sarah knew Webb hadn't survived 6 years of covering up mass murder by being stupid. Reeves appeared beside her, holding a tactical vest. Put this on. No. Sarah. He'll see it. No, I'm expecting violence. I need him to think I'm vulnerable. You're vulnerable. He's a trained officer with nothing left to lose. So am I. Sarah started up the steps. Stay here. This ends with me. That's not the plan. Plans change. She climbed before he could argue further. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not from fear. She'd burned through her fear reserves hours ago. This was something else. The weight of knowing that everything she'd fought for, everyone she'd lost, came down to the next 10 minutes. Webb stood in the shadow of Lincoln's statue, hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the reflecting pool. He wore civilian clothes, dark slacks, a jacket that probably cost more than Sarah had earned in a year as a nurse. He didn't turn when she approached. I used to come here when I was a cadet, he said. Stand right where you're standing and imagine what it would feel like to be remembered like that. To have a monument. To be part of history. Sarah stopped 20 feet away. You'll be remembered, just not the way you wanted. Webb finally turned. His face looked older in the harsh light, tired, but his eyes were sharp. You think you've won, he said. I know I have. Because you stood up at a ceremony and made accusations? Because you have some files and recordings that could be explained a dozen different ways? He smiled. You're naive if you think that's enough. It's already enough. The investigation's started. Your protection's gone. Half the Pentagon's calling for your head, and the other half is calling for yours. Did you know that? There are people in very high positions who think you're a threat to national security. A rogue operative who's been compromised and needs to be eliminated. Let them think what they want. Oh, I will. In fact, I'm counting on it. Webb stepped forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that flash drive you've been waving around. I'm going to take it and the backup I already have and disappear, quietly, cleanly. And in exchange, I won't have you and everyone you care about hunted down and killed. You don't have that kind of power anymore, don't I? Even now, even with all this attention, I still have friends. People who owe me favors. People who benefit from the systems I built. His voice dropped. You exposed one operation. I've been running 12 others for the past decade. Supply chains, intelligence networks, protection rackets. You think taking me down stops any of that? It just creates a vacuum. Someone else steps in. Nothing changes. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then I'll expose them too. With what? The evidence you don't have? The witnesses who keep dying? Webb pulled out a phone and showed her the screen. This is a live feed from the medical facility where they're holding Vance. One text from me and my people walk in there and finish what they started. Dalton has protection on him. Dalton has 3 agents and good intentions. I have 15 contractors and no conscience. Webb's thumb hovered over the send button. So, here's the deal. The drive's for Vance's life. You walk away, I walk away. We both pretend the past 6 years never happened. You killed 12 people. I made hard choices during wartime. That's what generals do. You murdered them for profit. I protected American interests. If a few soldiers had to die to prevent a larger compromise, that's acceptable losses. Webb's expression didn't change. You want to judge me? Fine. But I sleep fine at night knowing I did what was necessary. Sarah stared at him. This man had ordered the deaths of her friends, her unit, people she'd bled with and fought beside, and he stood there acting like it was just another operation. You're right about one thing, she said quietly. I was naive.
Finally seeing reason?
No. I was naive to think you'd ever feel remorse, to think that somewhere under all the lies and justifications, there was still a soldier who cared about honor. Sarah's voice hardened. But there's not. There's just a coward who killed better people than himself and convinced himself it was duty. Webb's face darkened. Careful.
Or what? You'll have me killed?
You're already planning that. You'll kill Vance. You'll kill Reeves. You'll kill anyone who threatens your carefully constructed mythology. Sarah stepped closer. But it won't work, because I didn't come here to negotiate. Then why did you come? To keep you talking while Dalton's team traced the signal to your contractors. Webb's expression shifted, just a flicker of uncertainty. Sarah saw it and pressed. You think you're the only one who can set a trap? The feed you showed me? We've been tracking it since you opened the app. Right now, federal agents are moving on that location. Your contractors are done. Webb's thumb moved toward the send button. Do it, Sarah said. Send the message. Prove to everyone watching that you're exactly what I've been saying, a murderer who'll kill an injured soldier to save himself.
Everyone watching?
Webb looked around the empty memorial. Sarah smiled. Did you really think Dalton wouldn't wire this entire place? Every word you've said, every threat you've made, it's all being recorded. Live feed to FBI headquarters, Pentagon oversight, and about a dozen news outlets. Webb's face went pale. He looked up and saw the tiny cameras positioned in the columns, the agents emerging from shadows, the sharpshooters making themselves visible on rooftops. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Sarah pulled out her phone and played back the last 60 seconds of conversation. Webb's voice came through crystal clear, admitting to operations, threatening Vance, justifying murder. His hand tightened on his phone. For a moment, Sarah thought he might try to run. Instead, he laughed, bitter and hollow.
You think this changes anything?
You think a recording and some documents will bring me down? I've been investigated before. I've survived inquiries, audits, entire commissions designed to expose me. I'm still here. I'm always still here. Not this time. Why? Because you're special? Because you're some noble hero fighting for justice? Webb stepped closer, his voice dropping to something cold and vicious. You're nothing. A broken soldier playing nurse, hiding from your own failure. You couldn't save your unit in Kandahar. You couldn't save Rodriguez or Kim. And you won't save Vance, no matter what you do here tonight. The words were designed to hurt. They did. But Sarah had learned something in the past 6 years. Pain was just information, and she didn't have to let it control her. You're right, she said quietly. I couldn't save them. I tried. I failed. And I've carried that failure every single day since. Webb's expression shifted to something like satisfaction. But here's the difference between us, Sarah continued. I learned from it. I became someone who saves people instead of sacrificing them, who protects instead of destroys, who admits mistakes instead of burying them under lies. She met his eyes. You want to know why you're going down and I'm still standing? Because I'm not afraid to be wrong, and you can't survive without being right. Webb's face twisted with rage. You self-righteous... He lunged. Sarah was ready. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, and put him face first into the marble floor. His phone skittered away. Agents swarmed immediately, weapons drawn. Webb struggled for a moment, then went still. They pulled him to his feet and cuffed him. He looked at Sarah with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes," Sarah said. "It is." They dragged him away. Sarah stood there, breathing hard, watching him disappear into federal custody. Reeves appeared beside her. "You okay?" "No, but I will be." Catherine emerged from the shadows with her camera crew. "That was the most beautiful takedown I've ever witnessed. Please tell me you'll do an interview." "Later, maybe." Sarah looked at the memorial behind her, at Lincoln's carved face watching over everything with stone patience. "Right now, I just want to know if Vance is safe." Dalton jogged up the steps, phone to his ear. He listened for a moment, then smiled. "We got them. All 15 contractors surrendered without a fight when they realized they were surrounded." He pocketed the phone. "Vance is secure. Injured but alive and talking. He's already giving testimony." Sarah felt something release in her chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion finally catching up. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? Webb gets arraigned. The evidence gets presented. The investigation expands to everyone he named on those recordings." Dalton's expression turned serious. "This is going to be ugly. Trials, hearings, probably a congressional inquiry. It'll take years to unravel everything he built. But it will be unraveled." "Yes, thanks to you." Sarah shook her head. "Thanks to Vance. He's the one who collected the evidence, who risked everything." "You both did. And because of that, a lot of families are going to get answers they've been waiting years for." Catherine stepped forward. "The story's already breaking. Every major outlet is running with it. By morning, this will be the biggest military scandal in decades." "Good. There's going to be backlash, people defending Webb, claiming this is politically motivated. You're going to be attacked, scrutinized, questioned about everything." "Let them come." Sarah's voice was steady. "I'm done hiding." 3 months later, Sarah sat in a congressional hearing room, hand raised, swearing to tell the truth. The room was packed. Senators, journalists, military brass, families of the Marines who died in Kandahar. Webb sat at the defendant's table, flanked by lawyers, looking smaller than Sarah remembered. The questioning went on for hours. Sarah recounted Kandahar in detail, the ambush, the casualties, the desperate fight to survive. She explained the 6 years of hiding, the hospital attack, the confrontation at the memorial. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just told the truth exactly as it happened. When she finished, the lead senator, a woman named Patricia Holbrook with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too many cover-ups, looked at her with something like respect. "Lieutenant Garrett, in your professional opinion, was the Kandahar operation compromised from the beginning?" "Yes, ma'am." "And do you believe General Webb knowingly sent your unit into an ambush?" "I don't believe it. I know it. The evidence proves it." "Thank you for your service and your testimony." Sarah stepped down. Webb's lawyer tried to discredit her during cross-examination, brought up her PTSD diagnosis, her use of a false identity, the violence at the hospital. Sarah answered every question calmly. Yes, she had PTSD. Yes, she'd hidden under a false name. Yes, she'd used force at the hospital, but she'd also saved 63 people that night, protected a witness, exposed a corruption network that had operated unchecked for a decade. The lawyer eventually gave up. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. The verdict came back unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder. Obstruction of justice. Trafficking in weapons and classified information. Dereliction of duty. Webb was sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. 14 other officials were indicted based on the evidence from Vance's drives. 8 were convicted. The rest took plea deals, the trafficking network was dismantled, and the families of the 12 Marines who died in Kandahar finally got their answers. Sarah stood in the military cemetery where they'd erected a memorial for Combat Medical Unit 12. 12 names carved in black granite. 12 faces she'd never forget. Vance stood beside her, leaning on a cane. The injuries from his kidnapping had healed mostly, but he'd never walk without pain again. They deserved better, he said quietly. They got what they deserved in the end: truth, recognition, justice. Because of you. Because of us. Sarah touched one of the names. Rodriguez. We finished what they started. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Vance cleared his throat. I heard you turned down the Medal of Honor. I didn't turn it down. I deferred it. Said it should go to the unit, not just me. That's the same thing as turning it down. I don't need a medal to know what I did mattered. Vance smiled slightly. What about the hospital? I heard they offered you your job back. Chief of Trauma Nursing. Full salary, benefits, public apology from the board. Sarah shook her head. I turned that down too. Why? Because I'm not that person anymore. Sarah Calloway died when my cover got blown. And Sarah Garrett doesn't belong in a hospital where everyone knows her story, where every patient looks at her like she's some kind of war hero instead of just a nurse trying to do her job. So what are you going to do? Sarah looked at the memorial, at the names of people who died because someone decided their lives were acceptable losses. I'm going to make sure it never happens again, she said. 6 months after the trial, Sarah stood in a small office in Washington, D.C., watching movers carry in boxes of files. The sign on the door read, Military Whistleblower Protection Initiative. Reeves appeared in the doorway. You know this is going to make you even more of a target, right? There are people who don't want oversight, who will fight you every step of the way. Let them try. You sound like you're looking forward to it. Maybe I am. I spent 6 years running from my past, another 3 months reliving it in courtrooms. I'm ready to do something that actually prevents it from happening to someone else. Reeves handed her a folder. First case. Marine captain claims his unit was ordered to falsify intelligence reports to justify a weapons contract. He reported it up the chain and got reassigned to a combat zone as punishment. Sarah opened the folder and started reading. Who's representing him? Nobody. He can't afford a lawyer and the military's stonewalling his complaints. Not anymore. Sarah picked up the phone. Get me his contact information and find out who gave that reassignment order. Reeves smiled. You're really doing this. Someone has to. Over the next year, the office grew. More staff, more cases, more soldiers who'd been punished for trying to do the right thing. Sarah worked 18-hour days, investigated corruption, testified in hearings, and built something that couldn't be ignored or buried. The work was hard, exhausting, sometimes heartbreaking, but it mattered. Catherine did a follow-up story a year after Webb's conviction, a documentary about whistleblowers, cover-ups, and the cost of speaking truth to power. Sarah was the centerpiece, but she made sure the focus stayed on the people she was helping, not her own story. The documentary won awards, got nominated for an Emmy, sparked congressional reforms. But Sarah didn't watch it. She was too busy working. 2 years after the trial, Sarah got a call from Dr. Marcus Holt. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. This is Sarah? It's Marcus Holt from Riverside General. A pause. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. You're in the top 5 anyway. I deserve that. He cleared his throat. I'm calling because I wanted you to know that the hospital's starting a program. Training for staff on how to recognize veterans who might be dealing with trauma, how to support them instead of judging them, how to see past the surface. That's good. We're calling it the Garrett Initiative, named after you. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Why? Because you showed us what we were missing. How many invisible people we walk past every day without seeing. How much strength it takes to ask for help. How badly we fail when we assume we know someone's story. His voice cracked slightly. You saved a lot of lives that night, but you also saved something in us. Made us remember why we became medical professionals in the first place. I appreciate that, but you don't need to name it after me. We want to, if you'll let us. Sarah thought about the nurse she'd been at Riverside. Invisible, exhausted, barely surviving. She thought about what it would have meant to have someone see her, really see her, not as a problem or a liability, but as someone who'd been through hell and was still fighting. Okay, she said, but on one condition. Name it. Make it accessible to everyone, not just veterans. Anyone dealing with trauma, anyone who's been dismissed or overlooked, anyone who needs someone to see them. Done. They talked for a few more minutes, then hung up. Sarah sat at her desk, looking at the photos she kept there. Her unit in Kandahar, young and alive and believing they were invincible. They'd all believed in something bigger than themselves, and even though most of them were gone, that belief survived. In her, in Vance, in every person who stood up and said this is wrong and refused to back down. 5 years after Webb's conviction, Sarah was invited to speak at the military academy where he'd once been a guest lecturer. She almost declined, but Reeves convinced her. They need to hear from you, need to understand that following orders isn't the same as doing what's right. So she went. The auditorium was full of cadets, young, eager, certain they'd never face the kind of choices Sarah had faced. She stood at the podium and looked out at them. "I'm not here to tell you war stories," she said. "I'm here to tell you about the hardest thing I've ever done." The room went quiet. It wasn't surviving an ambush. It wasn't fighting off attackers in a hospital. It wasn't even exposing one of the most powerful men in the military. Sarah paused. It was admitting I couldn't do it alone, that I needed help, that being strong doesn't mean never being broken. It means having the courage to put yourself back together. She told them about hiding, about pretending to be someone else, about the shame of thinking survival meant weakness. "For 6 years I thought I was protecting myself by being invisible," she said. "But what I was really doing was letting the people who hurt me win, because I was living like they were still in control, like their version of events was the truth." She talked about Vance, about Reeves, about Catherine and Dalton, and even Holt, about all the people who'd helped her stop running and start fighting. "You're going to face impossible choices," she said. "Times when doing the right thing costs you everything. When speaking up means losing your career, your reputation, maybe your life." Sarah met their eyes. "And in those moments, you're going to have to decide what kind of officer you want to be. The kind who protects the institution at all costs, or the kind who protects the people the institution is supposed to serve?" The cadets were leaning forward now, listening. General Webb chose the institution. He sacrificed people to protect his career, his operations, his version of patriotism, and he justified it by saying he was following orders, protecting national security, making hard choices. Sarah's voice hardened. But those were excuses. The truth is he was protecting himself, and 12 Marines died because of it. She let that sink in. "I'm not telling you to disobey orders. I'm telling you to think about who benefits from those orders, to question authority when authority is wrong, to stand up even when it's terrifying because someone has to." Sarah finished her speech and took questions. One cadet asked, "Do you regret it? Exposing Webb? Losing your anonymity?" Sarah thought about that. "No, I regret that I didn't do it sooner, that I let fear control me for so long. But I don't regret fighting back, because the alternative was spending the rest of my life invisible, and I'm done being invisible." The cadets gave her a standing ovation. Later, as she was leaving, a young woman stopped her. "Lieutenant Garrett, I just wanted to say thank you. My brother served in Afghanistan. He tried to report abuse in his unit, and they kicked him out with a dishonorable discharge. He's been fighting to clear his name for 3 years. Send me his information," Sarah said. "We'll look into it." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? Nobody should have to fight alone. Woke it." 10 years after Kandahar, Sarah stood at the same memorial where she'd confronted Webb. But this time, she wasn't fighting. She was remembering. Vance stood beside her, older now, his hair starting to gray. Reeves was there too, retired from active duty but still consulting on military reform. Catherine had flown in from New York, where she was working on her 5th book about government corruption. Even Dr. Holt had come, representing the hospital's veteran support program. They stood together in silence, watching the sun set over the reflecting pool. "You ever think about what you'd tell them?" Vance asked. "The unit, if you could." Sarah thought about it. "I'd tell them they mattered, that their deaths weren't meaningless, that we made sure the truth came out. You did more than that. You changed things, made the system better. Not better enough. There are still cover-ups, still corruption, still people getting sacrificed for someone else's ambition, but fewer than before, and when it happens, there are people ready to fight back, because you showed them how." Sarah looked at the names carved in granite at the Vietnam Memorial visible in the distance. Thousands of soldiers who'd died in a war that had its own share of lies and cover-ups. "I'm not a hero," she said quietly. I'm just someone who got tired of being afraid. That's what makes you a hero, Reeves said. Real courage isn't fearlessness. It's being terrified and doing it anyway. They stayed until dark. Then they went to a quiet bar nearby and raised a glass to the people who weren't there. To Rodriguez, to Kim, to the 8 other members of CMU 12 who died believing they were serving their country. To the ones who didn't make it, Vance said. To the ones who made sure we did, Sarah added. They drank, and for the first time in a decade, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since Kandahar. Peace. Not the kind that came from forgetting, the kind that came from knowing she'd done everything she could, that she'd fought until there was nothing left to fight, that she'd turned her pain into something that protected other people from experiencing the same thing. Later that night, alone in her apartment, Sarah looked at the photo of her unit one more time. Then she put it in a drawer, not to forget, but because she didn't need to see it every day anymore to remember why she was fighting. The fight was in her now, part of who she'd become. Sarah Garrett, the woman who'd been declared dead, who'd hidden as a nurse, who'd fought back against impossible odds and won, sat down at her desk and opened the file for her next case. A young sergeant claiming his commander had ordered him to lie about civilian casualties. Sarah picked up the phone. This is Sarah Garrett with the Military Whistleblower Protection Initiative. I understand you have a story to tell. On the other end of the line, a shaky voice said, I didn't think anyone would listen. I'm listening, Sarah said, and I'm not going anywhere until we make this right. She worked through the night, the way she'd done 1,000 times before. Because some fights never really ended. They just became part of who you were. And Sarah had learned something that no amount of trauma or fear could take away. That the people who try to make you invisible only have power if you let them. That speaking truth might cost you everything, but silence costs you more. That being broken doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. And being human means you get to choose what you become next. Sarah had spent 6 years being invisible. She'd spent the last decade making sure everyone else could be seen. And that was a fight worth having, every single day.